God was pursuing me through my pain. He was coming after me. Like, he was coming. And I don't know how else to explain it, because when you tell the story, it makes no sense, man. But when you read any of the stories in the Bible, God didn't choose the rich and the famous. He chose the broken. There was one night, man, where I had more drugs than I'd ever had in my entire life. I had a pocket full of money. And in the middle of the night, I was crying, hysteric, begging God to take my life. I didn't want to wake up the next day. I knew I wasn't living for God's purpose for me. I knew I was wrong. I just couldn't stop. And I was sitting on the back porch, high out of my mind. And my mom sat down next to me, and she leaned in and she said, "Hey, I quit. I quit. If this is the life that you choose to live, you're an adult man. I got 2 young children to raise. I got a husband, a job, an elderly mother to take care of. I can't control you. You gotta go." And she just tapped me on the shoulder. She told me she loved me, and she walked away. I got clean the next day. It was the best, most functioning addiction I had ever lived through. And I got clean because somebody who loved me told me, "I'm done enabling you. You can't be here anymore. I won't talk to you. You gotta go." I really dedicated the first 2 years of my sobriety to getting clean, and then the next 2 years to helping other people get clean.
Oftentimes, it's our biggest downfalls or our biggest stressors or our biggest "I got screwed" that ends up being your biggest blessing. Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And with me today is a man on a mission. He's got that big win hat on, entrepreneur, leader, husband, and father. Please join me in welcoming Sam Kaufman to the Spartan Leadership Podcast. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Real well. I love it. I love the big win hat. You have to tell Mr. Claudio I say what's up. But I'm excited for our conversation today because I know you're on a mission to have as much of an impact as possible in this world. And I know there were some early boulders thrown at early on in your life thrown at you. And I want to have you help our audience understand, what fueled your hunger for success and the man that you are today. So give us some of your backstory and how you landed to the man that you are today.
Sure, man. And feel free to stop me whenever, because my mouth will kind of just go. So you shut me up when you got a question, you want me to stop, I'm good. So yeah, man, I had like a relatively typical middle-class American upbringing. Parents got divorced at 5 years old, split household. But I always like to share this because it is odd. My mom and dad are still friends to this day. So my parents, through that divorce, they really did me a huge service. They stayed within 10 minutes of each other when they moved and bought new houses. And like, my dad was coming over to my mom's house for Christmas, like my whole life. So mom, stepdad, their 2 kids, me and my dad, all celebrating Christmas, Thanksgiving dinners. My birthdays were always whole family functions. So like, I like to say that because like, I don't want to say like child of divorce, like how traumatizing and feel bad for me, without mentioning like my parents absolutely crushed the divorced parents. Like if there was a game for that, they won like through and through.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. And so unfortunately though, as I grew up, man, like I was a kid, I was a real lower middle class kid in a really wealthy town. And so I grew up, I was overweight. I was in a very rich town. My parents were divorced. And like, it did not take long for me to feel real different than everybody else that I encountered. And I wasn't like ostracized. I had friends. Like I said, when I say like normal middle-class American upbringing, I really mean like if you watched it from an objective standpoint, it was really looked like a normal middle-class American upbringing. But as I got older, man, I felt different always. And I remember like I'd get bullied and teased for my weight. And, but I had something that no one else had. So like with that weight came like at some point, the other kids realized like I was a lot bigger than them, like a lot bigger, and realized like bullying me was not a good idea. So I always like got this like respect. I was fat, but I was a lot bigger than the other kid. So the other kid usually kept his mouth shut. So it like worked out in my favor for a while. And then it didn't. And so like in middle school, man, I was like a 200-pound seventh grader. I was big. And seventh grade, I remember in gym class, I had like something happen. I wasn't having a heart attack, but like my blood pressure skyrocketed. I didn't feel good. I went to the nurse. I went home. Mom ended up taking me to the doctor. Basically, like I was like medically forced to lose weight at 12 years old. I was big. I was eating terrible. And it was weird because like I was I played sports like religiously. And like it was so strange. Like I kept up with the other kids. We go to the doctor and find out that like my blood pressure's off the charts. My blood work's off the charts. I got one kidney that's smaller than the other one. The doctor's like, dude, you can't be this fat and have one messed up kidney. Like, this is not okay. And so as a 12-year-old, I went on like a health and fitness journey at 12 years old. And like, I like isolated myself in my house. I didn't hang out with anyone. And mind you, like I'm 12, bro. This is like hang out with kid time. You know what I mean? I didn't.
This is playtime.
This is playtime, but like not for me. Like I was afraid for my health at 12 because I was too overweight. And so like I head down, got to work. I lost a few pounds. I was okay. It was cool. Nothing really happened. I hit high school. And I hit high school and girls simultaneously. And all of a sudden, this whole overweight thing was just like not cool anymore. This was not going to work for me at all. And so like my freshman year summer into sophomore year high school, man, I lost 100 pounds. I went hard. I bought Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia to Bodybuilding. I read it cover to cover. I did everything. I lost the weight. I came back. And for the first time in my entire life, I was getting attention that I had always craved. Was getting a lot of attention. And that attention came with this desire to get more attention and more attention and more attention. And so like at this point, I never correlate the fact that like I have a very addictive personality. It was food as a kid. It was girls.
Yeah, you said
as a
food
teenager.
was your first drug when we were talking.
100%. Food was my first drug, man. Like I overate, and I obviously didn't know this until much later in my life, but I overate because it induced a feeling of being outside of myself. Overeating brought me out of my reality, which I was not okay with. And so like addiction, in my opinion, a lot of addiction is about controlling, or this attempt to control the reality that we live in. And it's a failed attempt, but it is an attempt, because if we alter the state of mind, we believe we're altering what's actually out here. We're not. We're just altering what's happening in here and destroying what's going on out here.
Yep.
And so, anyway, at that point, I get attention. I start going to parties. I get introduced to like drugs and alcohol. And that's where like that addiction inside of me that had been there my entire life unleashed immediately. And the minute I discovered a way to get outside of myself like that, it was just off to the races. And so that's like 15. By the time I'm 19 years old, I'm an IV heroin user. I'm smoking crack. I'm homeless. I barely graduated high school. Things are awful, awful, awful. And there's tons of at 16, I basically just started selling drugs out of my dad's house full time. I stopped going to school. I was selling drugs. And mind you, like money is great, but like it's attention, right? It's just feeding the addiction. Exactly. It's just continuing to feed the addictions, the addiction of getting outside of myself, the addiction of controlling the attention that you give me, all of that stuff. And so I stopped going to school. I started selling drugs. 17, I get arrested in my hometown with a ton of drugs. It's incredibly, and I lived in, it wasn't like small farm town, but it was like small town, wealthy in New Jersey. Everybody knew each other. The local paper, like everybody read it. And it was bad. Like it was bad. It was very embarrassing. Like anybody that was friends with me or knew me, like immediate cutoff because their parents read it. Like nobody was allowed to be near me. The high school was embarrassed. And I get arrested. And this really starts like this downward spiral, man, of at that point, like you talk about like lonely and isolated. Like I had nobody would hang out with me, spend time with me. So the people that I found that were willing to hang out with me were people that were far worse than I was. Because people that were better in better places than me at that point were not interested in spending time with me. It was about getting away from me. And so I found a real bad crowd. And at that point, like from 17 to 19, I've been arrested 3 or 4 times, selling drugs, possession, weapons charges. I really have no idea how I'm not in prison now, but that story is actually pretty good. So I'll share it real quick. But I ended up spending 16 to 22 on probation in New Jersey. And by nothing short of God, I kept screwing up. I kept getting arrested. My probation kept getting reset. I kept failing drug tests. I kept getting reset. And I had a guardian angel of a probation officer, man. And this woman did not want to put me in jail. I mean, she was doing she could tell. Because I go in there and I cry. I'd be like, lady, like, I don't want to live like this. I just can't stop. She's like, you got to get help. You got to go to a meeting. You got to get treatment. Well, I go to treatment, but man, 2 days off the drugs and like I couldn't control it. I couldn't do it anymore. I'd sign myself out. I'd end up back on the street, sign myself out. I was homeless, and I go to try to live with my aunt and uncle, my mom's sister and her husband in South Jersey. And I call them. They're open to helping me. The plan is I'm gonna come live with them for a few days to detox, then I'm gonna go right to treatment. So I have the scheme worked out, or it sounds good. I show up on their front door, man. They pop the door open. I'm there. I have nothing. I own nothing. I got like a bag with 2 old shirts in it, maybe. Man, they took one look at me, track marks on my arms, my hands. I was shooting up my feet. I'd blown all the veins out my arms. Man, they took one look at me, and within 30 seconds, they just started crying, like bawling, crying. They let me in. They didn't even know what to say because like no one really knew how bad it was at that time. So in the middle of my addiction, my mom and stepdad and brothers moved to South Carolina. My stepdad got a job. They moved out of state. I was supposed to go with them, but like, dude, I'm heavily like I can't leave. I can't leave. I love my family, but I can't leave the dope. I can't, or at least I thought. And so they find out how bad I am. I walk in. I pass out on their couch. I wake up like 14 hours later, my mom's standing there. And I'm like, I mean, she lives just a 13-hour drive from Jersey to South Carolina. My aunt called my mom. And in the time I was asleep, my mom put her shoes on, walked to her car and fucking drove. That's right. And drove. And I woke up and there she is. And she's like, hey, you're done. You're done. Whatever this is, done now. And, technically, I can't leave the state, right? I'm owned by the state at this particular time. She calls my probation officer, sets up a meeting for the next day. I don't feel good, man. I'm like a day off the stuff. Like I'm not doing okay, but I'm really trying to keep it together for my mom. Like my mom's like a guardian angel to me. So like just seeing her, you know, I mean, it hurt. And I wanted, you know what I mean? And so we go to my probation officer, and my probation officer says, look, like, he's literally days away from going to prison. Like, I can't stop this anymore. He has ridden this train into a brick wall. Like the documentation, I just can't. She goes, if you sign this, both of you, and you remove him from the state of New Jersey permanently, I'll release him. If he calls me every 21 days over the next 90 days to check in from South Carolina, I'll release him. And you can have him, but he can never come back here. So I got like forcibly removed from the state of New Jersey. Best thing that ever happened to me.
Are you allowed back in New Jersey yet?
I go all the time. I hope so. I haven't been pulled over and arrested yet. It's been 10 years. I hope so.
Good. All right, go on, man. I just had to ask.
Yeah, no, I've been a bunch. I think so. I don't even know I don't know how, like, I don't really know what happened, man. I was in a daze. That's what she said. Who knows what the reality of that was or the legality of that was, but that woman saved my life. We leave my probation officer's office, dude, and man, the addiction I look at my mom and I'm like, hey, I got to make a quick stop. I'm down to leave. I'm down to pack up. I'm down to never come back. I need to make one quick stop before we go. She's like, no, my mom's not a stupid woman by any stretch of the imagination. She's like, you ain't stopping anywhere. I was like, Mom, like, I have to. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, I got to see a friend real quick. And she knows I'm trying to cop drug. Like she's well aware of what's going on. And she won't stop this car, man. She's rolling down the highway. She won't pull this thing over. And I was like, hey, I love you so much. And I am so, so sorry for what I'm about to do. But I have to do it, man. I unbuckled, popped the door open, and rolled out that moving vehicle. My mom, who just got me released from probation after 5 years, to move me down to South Carolina to save my life. And I jumped out of that moving vehicle. All on gratitude. Huh?
On the interstate?
On the highway. Yep. Oh, on the highway. Yeah. No, man, that thing had me. Like the devil had me, bro. like had me, and I couldn't shake it loose. I spent 12 hours trying to cop one bag of dope and couldn't. First time in a long time that I could not get a bag of dope. You talk about God protecting me. And I shamefully and embarrassed and full of guilt hobbled back into my aunt's house. It was summer. It was like August. I'm drenched in sweat and dirt, and I'm cut up, and it's just embarrassing. And I walk in, and I just surrendered, man. I said, "Ma, like I'm ready to go. Whenever you're ready to go, I'm ready to go." And we hopped in the car and we left. And from leaving, took me another year and a half to get clean. Took me another year and a half. I had a couple of months here, a couple of months there. I would hit meetings. I would relapse. I would drink. I would smoke something. What got me clean, bro, was at the end of it, I was real bad off. I was off the opiates at this point. I wasn't using needles, but I was bad off on some other stuff. And I was sitting on my mom's back porch. Now, mind you, I came from homelessness to living with my mom, stepdad, and my two brothers in their beautiful 3-story house just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. So like the dirty, grungy, junky, like that wasn't really flying anymore. I was in a really beautiful place, and I wasn't even comfortable being a junkie in this place. There was a lot of love in this house, and God was in this house. And I didn't, my addiction and what with my surroundings were battling now. Like something wasn't clicking like it used to. And I was sitting on the back porch, high out of my mind. And my mom sat down next to me. It was like 3:00 in the morning. And no one had ever done this before. My parents had never done this before. She leaned in and she said, "Hey, I quit. I quit. If this is the life that you choose to live, you're an adult man. I can't control your decisions anymore, but you can't do it here. You got a couple of days. But if you want to keep using, you want to keep being high, I can't try to stop you anymore. I got 2 young children to raise. I got a husband, a job, an elderly mother to take care of. I can't control you. You got to go." And she just tapped me on the shoulder. She told me she loved me, and she walked away. I got clean the next day. That was July 21st, 2012, 2013, July 21st. That was the next day I stopped using. My mom had never quit on me before. And when I realized that was the level at which I had driven every single person who loved me. And what happens when an addict gets clean is spiritual bankruptcy. I was in a beautiful house. I wasn't on the verge of going to jail. It was the first time since I was 16. I wasn't on probation. I had a job. It was the best, most functioning addiction I had ever lived through. And I got clean because somebody who loved me told me, "I'm done enabling you. You can't be here anymore. I won't talk to you. You got to go." You know, talk about the power of, yeah, right. So I got clean. I got clean, man. And look, so even through my addiction, bro, like I've always believed that I was built and destined for more. I've always loved and cared about people deeply. I used to think there was something wrong with me as a kid. I thought I was like feminine. I thought that I wasn't like the other boys. I always felt like, why do I feel like crying when they're laughing? Why do I feel like that kid shouldn't be getting made fun of when they're like, why am I so different? Why do I care? And everybody else seems like they don't give a shit. Like I thought I was broken as a boy, which led to being very uncomfortable as a young man because I had all these feelings that I thought something was wrong with me.
Well,
that men don't.
We're not taught how to express them, right?
No, we're labeled.
We're labeled. We're taught to rub dirt on it, not cry, all the opposite stuff, not feel. And then there you are having all the feelings, not understanding how to express them.
Yeah. And what I realized, I'm having all the same feelings you are, man. You just learned how to stuff them better than I did. The other boys just learned how to not acknowledge them. I didn't know how to not acknowledge them. Nobody taught me even how to really stuff them well. Like I got kind of screwed on both spectrums. Like, you know what I mean? I didn't get. And so as a young man, so I got clean. And I just say that to say that, like, I always felt different and on every level, but I believed that I could do something special in the world. And I just had no idea what that was. Even in my using, I would just beg God for some clarity on, like, what am I supposed, can't be it. Like there was one night, man, where I had more drugs than I'd ever had in my entire life. I had a pocket full of money, everything from an addict standpoint, everything was perfect. And in the middle of the night, I was crying hysterical, begging God to take my life. I didn't want to wake up the next day. I knew I wasn't in the right place. I knew I wasn't living for God's purpose for me. I knew I was wrong. I just couldn't stop. Or I didn't know how. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the community. I didn't know what to do. So I got clean through a 12-step program. Absolutely saved my life. I got sponsored by a man who, with a bunch of clean time, I started sponsoring people. It was in sponsoring other men that I discovered my passion for leadership. It was in sponsoring. Yeah, it was in sponsoring other men in a 12-step program where I realized that nothing made me feel better than helping another person be better. And that's the route that I really like dedicated the first 2 years of my sobriety to getting clean, and then the next 2 years to helping other people get clean. And what ended up happening was God kept placing these massive responsibilities in my life. And for some reason, I continued to take them on. And I have no explanation other than I was just so grateful that things that I was being asked and trusted to do things. And so in my first 5 years clean, was sponsoring other men. I got a decent job where I was helping lead teams at a cabinet install company. I met my now wife, who had she had a baby and a 5-year-old daughter. And I fell in love with my wife, man. And like, I literally moved out of my parents' 3-story house and into her parents' trailer garage. We were sleeping on the garage floor. And man, we were not together long before, like, I had to get those kids out of there. I had to get those kids out of there. And I didn't know what that meant, but we started working. And so now I'm like leading men in recovery. I'm trying to lead this young woman out of this terrible situation. I'm trying to lead these babies into a healthy place. And we get this, and things are just happening quick, man. At 24,
construction.
This is right when I got into construction. Yeah, so it's all happening at the same time. It's hard to timeline the track because everything, God just put all this in front of me to call me up to where I'm at now. And now I'm where I am to be called up to where I'm going to be in 5 years. I don't even know what that is, right? But I start this cabinet install job. That's how I got into construction. And I started making enough money to support this girl and her babies. And I'm like, cool. So like we get this apartment. And once we're in the apartment, dude, like the first time I had ever lived on my own without being homeless was this apartment with my now wife. I never had like college dorm. I never had like roommates. I never got my own place. Like my own place was a box on the street. Like my own place was your couch. Like I never had anything. This is my first time.
Did you have like an epiphany when you were there? Like at what point did that hit you? Because as you think about that, because as you said that, I'm sitting there going, yeah, man, I went to college, so first I was in the dorm room, had a roommate, was in the dorm room, had my own bed, then, lived at the fraternity house and, a couple different rooms there, a couple different roommates, whatever, then had my own duplex. So then like I always had I never wanted to go back home. And so I was sitting there, as you said that, I'm like, dang, yeah, get to 24, 25 years old. And that's your first time having your own place. That's got to be poetic in a sense.
Well, poetic and like definitely frightening. So I'll tell you the exact moment that it hit me. And I'll tell you the exact moment because you asked in the beginning, like about like this drive to be successful. I came home one afternoon from my cabinet install job where I got paid like 38 grand a year, which is great money for a freshly clean addict who had never done anything but spend 38 grand a year. I walked in the door, I took off my boots and I checked my bank account because rent was due in like a day or two. I had like $650 in my checking account and like $1,800 in my savings account or something, which was like, by all standards at that time, I was like very proud of the progression I was making. I'm looking at my bank account and like I look up and these two little kids are sitting on this couch. One's like a baby, he's in a diaper, he's got a bottle, and the other one's 5.5 years old. I'm looking at these two kids and I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like I am solely responsible for everything that happens to those two children from this point forward. Like I have to do this, and $1,800 is not going to cut it. And I'm like looking at my phone and I'm looking at the kids and I'm looking at my phone and I'm like, holy shit, like this is not going to work. And I have a mild panic attack. And I have this moment where I'm like, I assume a lot of men have this moment and they run from it. And I assume it's the men who have this moment and run towards it that really find what it is they need to find to support their families and their teams. But I looked at that phone and I was like, I am going to figure out how to do everything for these kids and never have to look at my phone bank account in dread ever again. And I closed the app. And from that moment, that very, very, very strong moment in my life, that's the moment that changed everything. The next day I went to my boss. I said, hey, what else can I do? You got me 7 days a week right now. What else can I do? Now, I know 7 days a week is the opposite of what I need to do to support my family. I learned that later, but I went to my boss, said, what do you need me to do? And I learned everything about that business. Everything. And so a few months later, I asked the guy, I said, hey, man, he's paying me piece rate by the job right now. It's construction. So he's paying me for what I install. He's not paying me for selling. He's not paying me for business development. He's not paying me for team leadership or training. I went to him and I thought really we were going to enter into this conversation. It was going to be really quick. He was going to say, sure. I was going to walk away. I said, hey, dude, I'm working about 70 hours a week for you. I'm really only getting compensated for like 35. I'll probably make 45 grand that year. So still more than the year before. And I said, hey, dude, what do you feel about like $1,000 a week salary? Just pay me 50 grand a year. I'll be your manager. I'll train everybody. I'll install. Like, you own me for 50 grand a year. Like, and I thought I was making out on the better end of that deal at that point. I'm like 23 and a half years old, 24 maybe. And he looks at me and he goes, hey, dude, like, I appreciate you coming to me, but salaries for like a very special type of person, an employee. And you're just not that. You're just not that special type of person, employee. When I tell you like a switch flipped in my brain that I did not know existed, I'm telling you within like 4 seconds, bro, a switch flipped. And I went, I'm going to put you out of business. I literally just stared at this guy. He had no kids, on the verge of divorce, working us to the bone. I'm like, I'm trying to support a family over here who's like struggling. I was like, dude, I'm going to put you out of business. And my intention was not to hurt him. My intention was just to drive hard enough to put anybody out of business. So I went to this group of guys in my recovery community and I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about dipping out and starting my own company. I just want to install directly for our customers. I don't even want to build a business. I just want to go be an installer, but I don't want to give him a cut anymore because like I'm getting screwed. And this old guy named Randall, I still see Randall sometimes. He's got like 42 years clean or something crazy. Randall leans over and he goes, hey, man, look, what's the worst case scenario? You lose everything. At least you'll be clean. And I was like,
that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, that statement changed my life because I realized in that moment that there is nothing I can be afraid of outside of some traumatic health scare of somebody I love that can really hurt me if I'm clean. Because I can come back from anything. If I don't use literally anything, like you really can't do that much to me. If I'm living in integrity and I'm clean, man, it's just stuff. It's just money.
It's just stuff.
It's just stuff.
That's a powerful statement for everyone because a lot of people know that listen to me, like I didn't lose everything, but I lost everything professionally. And I went through a really tough time a couple of years ago. So fortunately, because we had done some proper things financially, I didn't lose everything financially, but I lost my identity. I lost I looked at my kids in that instance as well. And my wife, and I knew that like, even if we lost monetarily the house, stuff of that nature, like that would be a huge ego thing for me. But as long as I got my family, like we're good. And then beyond that is like, no, I'm going to rebuild back better than ever before. Because then that fire gets lit, and it's just, it's an interesting dichotomy, but so many people, this is where business owners or people that want to be business owners that never take that leap, really screw themselves is that they're so scared of losing. They don't know what they could possibly gain. Or they're so scared of losing that they don't even know that they could reinvent themselves in such a fantastic way that it possibly changes the world.
Good. 100%. 100%. That fear of people's perspective and judgment from failure holds back so many people. So many people. Because dude, I couldn't agree more.
All right, but so you go and put that guy out of business, or maybe you don't. But anyhow, you go on.
Oh, I did, but I'll get there. Oh no, I did. I'll get there later though. Yeah. So I went in. I put in my 30 days notice. Obviously, like all bad employers are, he's shocked. Didn't see it coming. Couldn't have ever imagined it. I'm sure a lot of people listening have had that. Like, you're shocked, man. Like, really? Okay. So I put in my 30 days, and I go out and I start installing cabinets, dude. And like I just sort of I was an incredible cabinet installer, which is what I told myself for quite a long time. Come to find out, what I realized I was actually very, very good at was seeing inefficiencies in an operational process and eliminating them before they showed up. So where I thought I was this incredible installer, what I was actually really gifted at was seeing 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 steps into the future in a procedure and eliminating the roadblocks ahead of people. So we quite literally took over cabinet installation in Charleston, South Carolina. We were definitely the biggest install company. We got just install labor alone to over 7 figures, which for a lot of listeners is probably not a lot. For some, it might be a ton. But to do $1 million a year in new construction cabinet install labor only, it's too much for anybody who's thinking about doing it. It's too much. I almost grew myself out of business. So you talk about reinvention and losing everything professionally. Over the course of the first 5 years of my business, everything just grew and grew and grew. And with it, my ego joined. And that grew and grew and grew. And my greed decided to join ego. And that grew and grew and grew. The only thing I did right in those first 5 years was love and care about the people who worked for me. That was it. That was the only right decision that I made. I got so out of control at one point. We expanded to a second city, simultaneously adding additional services, and basically, like a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs that I now have the opportunity and privilege of coaching and helping, shiny object syndrome just started to take over. Because I believed I was this untouchable entrepreneur because I had nailed this. I'm invincible. Anything I sell is going to crush it. So if I do this little thing and I can do this 5 more times and 5 more businesses, and I'm just going to be this multimillionaire before I'm 30. And man, it almost killed me, man. It almost destroyed my marriage. It almost destroyed my business. And long story short, 2020 happened, and we were in this second city. And we found this client in the second city we were doing business in, and this client was paying us astronomically more than we were making in our original business model. This was a custom carpentry and cabinetry thing versus the new construction stuff we were used to doing. We were getting paid so much more money for the custom stuff because it's really hard to come by people as good as my people were. And we realized holy shit, we're really good. We didn't even realize how good we were. So we go, and the people who own the company, 2 investors, older guys, investors, and they were wealthy. And I was envious, and I was greedy, and I was egotistical, and I wanted to be as close to them as humanly possible. I wanted to attach my business to their business as quick as I could because I thought that was my easy route to wealth and success. If I could just get in with these people, I got to share this anytime I tell this story, I got to share this part because it is important. I worked very closely with one of the people who owned that company, and I watched him work and lie and have no values and be out of integrity and lie to his girlfriend and be divorced 3 times and have no relationship with his kids. And I'm watching in my head. I'm like, is this really the kind of guy I want to mentor me? Yeah, he's rich. He's rich, of course. I'll do well in the other areas, and he can be that POS, but he's rich. So of course I want him in my life. My heart just for months, dude, my heart's telling me, I'm like, this don't feel right. This is not the kind of men. This isn't how you were brought up when you got clean. These are not the men you attach yourself to. You attach yourself to men who have what you want, who live like you want to live, who treat their wives the way you want to treat your wife, who treat their kids the way you want to treat your kid. You don't just pick and choose little pillars and allow people to operate like that and spend time with them like this.
That is such an important message for everyone to hear. That's so important. I just want to pause real quick so you can keep going. I just want everyone to hear that you cannot pick and choose certain pillars, like Sam said. You can't sit there and say, well, he's rich or she's rich, but then they're morally bankrupt, and think that influence won't infiltrate into you. All right, go ahead,
100%. No, I appreciate you pausing for a second, because core value alignment is what saved and changed my life. I mean, straight up core value alignment. When I aligned my core values with everybody that I did business with, hung out with, spent time with, worked with, coached, it didn't matter. That's what created the life I'm living right now. I believe that 100%. That's what brought money to my bank account. That's what brought joy to my family. That's what, 100%. So the end of 2020, this guy who's rich, who I really should be, of course, I should be like this guy, stiffs us out of a $100,000+ invoice that they had racked up with us over the course of a few months. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, if you're $1 million company and you're doing labor only and your margins are razor thin and you get stiffed out of 10% of your total revenue, you're screwed. Mm-hmm. You're screwed. There is no mathematical way to explain it other than, in that scenario, you are officially screwed. And I was broken. He wouldn't pay. This was the first time since I started my business I felt completely out of control, because he wouldn't pay. Just wouldn't do it. Like, I didn't know what to do. I had no idea. I was just in this, like, and as this is happening, like, my wife is watching me just let this man lie to me and deceive me, and she's losing respect for me as it's happening, because I refuse to call a lawyer. I refuse to sue, because I'm like, no, he said he would pay on Friday. Like, I don't want to call a lawyer. And they scared me, bro. Like, I thought, like, because they were rich, like, anything I did, they'd win. I really equated your monetary value to making you stronger than me and better than me and faster than me. And if you were richer than me, like, I automatically lose. Like, how sick is that? Like, how sick is that to live like that as a man, to just assume that anybody who has more money than you is just a better man than you, to assume that anybody who's richer than you is favored by God more than you? It's ridiculous. It's sick.
Well, and conversely, right? Because we don't ever want to look down on anyone either that's not as wealthy or not as blessed either, right? So it's like,
yes,
no, we're all humans, gifted and created uniquely by God. And so he calls us to love each other, not to look up or down upon each other.
100%. Absolutely. And that's a good point too, because throughout that time, I did look down on people at multiple different times during that timeline. Because you can't both idolize certain humans and think they're better than you without thinking certain other people are worse than you. There's no middle ground there.
That's a really powerful statement, brother.
So the ego works both ways. And what happened in this situation, basically, this is what spawned everything that changed my life at the end of 2020. I had my marriage needed me. My children needed me. My business needed me. My bank account needed me. My spirit needed me. And I was broken. And I was on the verge of giving. I had never thought about quitting more in my entire life. I had to lay off my entire staff in my second city. My ops manager down there was a guy who he dedicated 2 years of his life, moved from Charleston to down there to run that thing. I had to move him back up here. He's my ops manager still to this day. He's an amazing man and human, but this led to the conversation I had with my team where I said, here's the deal, guys. I cannot do this anymore. In early 2021, I said, I have been screwed and I have no idea what to do. I'm racking up an Amex bill and really nothing's looking like it's panning out well. Like the timeline is shortening. The fuse is burning down on the cash flow to run this business, but I cannot sleep knowing that I did not give it everything that I had, that I didn't put all of my chips on the table to save this for you guys. Sat my whole team down. I admitted defeat. I got humble for the first time in a long time. I got honest for the first time in a long time. I said, here's what I want to do. I want to take this business. I want to nix labor only. And I want to turn into a full-blown kitchen, bath, and flooring retail business. And I want to do it now, like overnight. I want to become that overnight. And they're like,
people know, like, I would like that. That's a nuts statement, right?
Yeah.
Like for anyone that's not in business and let alone that business, that is an insane statement.
Yeah, it is. And luckily my team didn't know how insane it was. They're like, yeah, it sounds awesome. I was like, cool, great. I'm glad that you're behind me. Now, overnight took overnight was a 14-month process.
And even that's quick.
Yeah, it was quick, man. We nixed. So we were doing $1 million in labor only. We nixed all, but from 2021, into 2022. In 2022, we did just under 4 million and no labor only service whatsoever. In 2021, awesome. We made the decision to nix labor. But this is what I need to share. This is not some incredible like feat of my own business acumen. What this came from was a desire to serve the people that worked for me and my family. This did not come from a cash grab. For the first time in my business life, my desire was, I screwed up and I need to do everything in my power to serve the people who have sacrificed and supported me for the last 5 years. And every single decision that I made was revolved around that service mentality. I put all of my faith in God. Dude, I got baptized in early 2022 because I started a belief and a faith that I had never had in 2021. That destruction of my ego led me to I needed something to fill that void. And that void, that hole in me was God-shaped. I just didn't know it. And so I walked in and I found that because of that. And so like, he put all of this in my path on purpose. It was all supposed to happen this way because he knew I wasn't coming either way. He knew it. I had to be broken down to get humble enough to get to where I needed to be. And that's what, and I'm so, that man screwing us out of that invoice saved my life, saved my marriage. I don't even know if I'd be clean today, man. I mean, how much pain until I relapsed? How little God.
Just how you just said that. I want people to hear this. Oftentimes it's our biggest downfalls or our biggest stressors or our biggest, I got screwed, that ends up being your biggest blessing. And I can say that for me 100%. And it sounds like you're saying that it's like, look, this guy screwed him out of 100K. He had to lay off his entire staff in that city because he couldn't pay them because of this guy screwing him over. And he, fast forward through a little bit of that story, he's now saying it was his greatest blessing.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't feel like it at the time.
No, it never does.
Nope.
No, in fact, it feels like the world's ending.
And what got me through it was I made a decision that I was going to be the best version of myself every single day. My wife needed me. I was going to be a good husband. My team needed me. I was going to be a good leader. I surrendered. I just surrendered and said, how I behave needs to be more important than my performance and my bank account. And I'm just going to focus on my behavior. I'm going to focus on core values. I'm going to focus on bringing on the right team members. I'm going to fire everybody who's toxic. I'm going to get rid of anything that's in our marriage that's unhealthy. I'm going to get rid of any distractions from spending family time with my kids. It made no sense, bro. I spent less time at work, more time at home, less time in my bank account, more time in my living room playing Fortnite with my kids, less time at the office, more time at church and prayer, and everything changed. When I let go, everything changed. But I wouldn't have let it go on my own. And when it happened, it hurt so bad, because it's all the ego. And it was so painful. And man, I got so fortunate that I got surrounded, man, because at this time I was seeking out a relationship with a higher power, sort of by accident, but I was also seeking out professional development. And I found the groups, the Artes and the Apexes and all the stuff. And I found all the groups and I joined all the groups, every single one of them. I didn't have any money to do it, but I was like, I fully accept that I don't know how to actually do what I just promised my team we were going to do. Like I made a promise and I walked away and I was like, hey man, how you get, what? Like how? Like, I don't know. So I went on like a war path of finding coaching and people and community and groups and podcasts. And man, again, it's just God continues to move in my life. And I went from one group, connected me to somebody. I found a better group, connected me to somebody. I found a better group, connected me to somebody. Eventually, the end of 2021, I found Mike and I joined the Champion Circle as a client. I used win rate. I hired win rate to coach me into doing what I had promised I'd done with my team. And man, I was so done. I was so done. I was in such a humble place. I was scared. I just did the work, dude. I just hired a coach and I did the work. And Winright Mike saw that I just did the work. I showed up, I poured into other people in the group. I took calls. I shared my faith. I shared my beliefs. I shared all of my failures. Clients would post things. I was like, hey, man, like I did that too and almost lost everything. So my suggestion would be you go this route instead. And in April 2022 is when I got the call that Mike was like, hey man, we want you to come onto the team. Like your willingness and ability to pour into other people is just like, you would make an amazing coach. Yeah. You want to talk about imposter syndrome, bro. I'm 6 months out of brokenness and despair and pain. And of course I take the position, bro. That's who we are. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Then I hang up the phone and I go to my wife and I'm like, hey, I just got offered a coaching position, win rate. And she's like, that's exactly what you wanted. Like, yeah, but I don't know if I want it anymore. Like, do they know? Do they know how screwed up I am? Do they know how broken I am? Do they know how many mistakes I've made?
Yeah.
Do they know that do they know that I'm still having cash flow problems? Do they know? Like, man, and thank God for God, because one of the things that goes on my gratitude journal every single day is the 10th. I do 10 gratitudes handwritten every day. And the 10th one is always, I am grateful that I am enough. I am grateful that I am enough. It is something I had to lock into last year to understand that I have everything I deserve, good and bad. We get what we give. And so these opportunities and these positions, this imposter syndrome, the enemy that climbs deep in here and lies to me to tell me I'm not good enough. And if they only knew, and I need to be more like Josh, because if I dress like Josh or my podcast setup looked like Josh, I'd be more successful. And if I sold a construction service, if I'd sold roofing, I'd be better. If I did solar, I'd be richer. All that shit is just lies, man.
Yeah.
It's just all lies. And I had to let all that go. I had to be open to success entering my life. I never realized how much I walled it off because I was so afraid of it. So afraid of it.
Yeah, you're afraid. Go ahead.
No. And now we're here, man. And now we're here. So.
It's an incredible story. I mean, and you're afraid because you didn't know what you were afraid of and you didn't have a guide at the time. And what's so interesting about what you said is that old adage is when the student's ready, the master appears or the teacher appears. And you had to get broken down, like you said, to be ready for that teacher to appear. And now, you know, one of those teachers being Mike, one of those teachers being God, you know, so it's interesting that, like, you know, your faith took over, a lot of things took over for you. Man, it's just an incredible story because so many people would have quit along the way. Right. And
I thought about it. I thought about it a few times. And that's why I can't
think about it.
It all goes to God. I can't explain it, dude. I'd love to tell you, man, I'm just so grit and I'm so disciplined and I'm so consistent. And man, I am those things, but I'm nothing without him. Like, I can't explain it outside of, like, God was pursuing me through my pain. He was coming after me. Like, he was coming. And I don't know how else to explain it, because when you tell the story, it makes no sense, man. But when you read any of the stories in the Bible, they make no sense. God didn't choose the rich and the famous. He chose the broken, you know?
And your brokenness is what'll heal others. Your brokenness is what gives you the right to help others. That's it. Like when you're saying, when you hung up the phone with Mike and you're experiencing that imposter syndrome and you're saying, does he know this is it? I'm sitting here in my head. I was like, yeah, he does. He knows exactly that, because that's exactly what qualifies you to lead.
Yeah.
Is your brokenness.
Well, 100%. Have you heard I didn't make this one up, but it's a good one, that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called.
Yeah. John Gordon always says that. I was actually searching for that in my memory banks as you were talking. You're dang right. John Gordon repeats that all the time. Love that quote.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah. But that's the story, man. And like today, it's my recovery is still important. Helping recovering people is still important. My business is important. I have a faith. My family life is stronger than it's ever been. I focused on the fulfillment and the purpose and the people, and everything else just started kind of showing up. You know, I had to become the man worthy of the things I wanted before they would enter my life.
That's a good one. You know what? That's a great one to end on. You had to become the man worthy enough of what you wanted in your life.
Yeah.
And it came true. And that's what everyone should be, man, woman, otherwise, like, become worthy, become the one worthy. So, man, you know what's cool about this interview, Sam? It wasn't really an interview.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good, because I want to showcase you. That's my job as the podcast host, is to showcase the guest. You know, you hear some of these podcast hosts that just want to talk too much. It's funny. I do a lot of preparation for the podcast, and obviously you and Alicia spoke as well. So for those who know, like, we always have questions that we're going to ask just be based on the research. I didn't ask one today. So
hey,
I'm going to consider that a record with Mr. Sam Kaufman. Not one question was asked. We just let the story roll, and we added dialogue along the way. That's amazing.
That was cool, man. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you being on and pouring into the audience. Where can everyone follow you, find you, social media otherwise?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and YouTube is all at Sam Kaufman Official. It's all the same thing. So you can find me there. You can email me at sam@winrayconsulting.com. And you can't call me, because I don't answer the phone. You can reach out to me in those other places.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, brother. It's been a great getting to know you a little bit, and hopefully run into you with Mike sometime. But thanks for pouring into this audience. And audience, make sure you share the shit out of this episode. Sam was bringing the heat with that story. I know it'll touch a lot of people's lives. Until next time, remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.